my name's Christy Lorio, and I am presenting my time as spent in the University of New Orleans MFA Studio Art program. And this recording was originally made for the Society of Photographic Education, or SPE, for their graduate student night for their national conference online. So a little bit about me first. I'm started photography in 2014 with taking 2 community college non-credit courses and enrolled in the MFA Studio Art program at UNO in the fall of 2020. So I'm from the New Orleans area. I grew up in the suburbs with a swamp for a backyard, and that factors prominently into my work. I've lived here almost my entire life. I've been with my husband for 21 years, married for 18. I'm super close to my brother and sister. Once a big sis, always a big sis, even though we're all in our 30s and 40s now. I'm also a writer and photographer. I always have been a writer. I've made magazines, little magazines and such, since like the 2nd grade. And around 2009, I started writing professionally, which is getting me freelance work for magazines, websites, etc. So some of the gigs that I was getting, they wanted somebody who could write and take photos, and my photography skills at that time were non-existent. So I bought a DSLR camera off a friend in 2014, and I enrolled in 2 non-accredited photo classes at a community college. I practiced and learned photography on my own until I made the decision to apply for a studio art MFA in 2020. And to my shock, I got in. And really my goal getting to the program was just really simple. Just getting my photography on the same level as my writing. My academic career, my cancer journey is inextricably linked, unfortunately. When I was a traditional student, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, the same cancer I have now. And he died a year after his initial diagnosis when I was 21 years old. Then my grandma died of pancreatic cancer a year and a half later, and then I decided to drop out of school. I re-enrolled in college at 33 years old after what I like to joke was my gap decade, and I graduated at 35 in December 2015 with 2 bachelor's degrees, one in English literature and one in film and theater. I really felt like I was just getting warmed up in my academic career when I graduated, so I took a year and a half off, worked for the local newspaper, and then went back again for my MFA in creative writing. After my first year in the program, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer in June 2018. So that was the summer after my first 2 semesters of the program. I graduated at the height of COVID in May 2020 and immediately plunged back into school for the fall 2020 semester, this time in my studio art program. And since that initial diagnosis, I've been in and out of treatment, mostly and I've endured multiple surgeries, radiation, and I don't really count, but about 100 rounds of chemo through the years. So how the program started for me. Again, I started August 2020, and I was the class of COVID. I was really super unsure of my skills, and I didn't identify myself as an artist. I had no art background, and in the first semester, I found out I had to be on chemo for the rest of my life. I had a brain tumor come back. I had a separate melanoma diagnosis, all within a few week time span. My first semester of my studio art program was a really big adjustment. Not only did I have to shift gears from writing to photography as my main priority, I just started thinking of myself as an artist for the first time in my life. This is really difficult since I didn't have a lick of an art background, but my professors pushed me to make more conceptual art, and that was after my first ever studio visit. I really felt intimidated. I felt like a fraud, and starting a new program during strict COVID protocols didn't help. We were all virtual, and I didn't really meet other students until maybe the second half of that first semester. Catching up felt impossible, and I had no one to commiserate with. I had just finished writing a 150-page creative thesis about my cancer experience, And the last thing I thought I was going to be doing in this new photography program was mining my own health for work. But turns out it was just getting started. I really hated nearly every photo I turned in that first midterm critique, but my professors were encouraging and saw things in my work that I couldn't see yet, namely me gripping a photo with a wig. So how's it going now? So I passed candidacy in spring 2022, and I was thinking about my thesis show all this summer. I was preparing to teach intro to photo independently, and then August 2022 hit, 6-month prognosis from a doctor. The week of final year of school. I'm sorry, the first week of my final year of school, that's when I found out. So I had to drop out of art school. So I worked as a teaching assistant my first 2 years, and then passed candidacy, like I said, and was eager to start my third and final year. I was really excited to teach intro to photo independently and start working on my thesis show, but my health, however, had other plans for me. I got COVID the first week of the fall 2022 semester, and then that same week I was diagnosed with something called leptomeningeal disease, or LMD. After 2 years of mostly stable scans, the cancer adapted and was now in the lining of my brain. And there's no cure for this, and I was given 6 months left to live before I could even hand out the syllabus for class. So with a 6-month prognosis, that meant I would not live long enough to finish my 4th college degree, so I made the painful decision to drop out of school. It really wouldn't be fair to my students to try to teach, I couldn't teach while I was going through this, and it wouldn't be fair to myself. So these are some of the first photos that I made in my first year of the program. I really experimented with photographing some of my dad's old things that I inherited, like this taxidermy snakehead. We both have an affinity for snakes, which you'll soon see. I also experimented with tons of photos addressing hair loss, which I've lost my hair 4 times. A bald head was really one of the only indicators that I was sick. And I primarily considered myself a landscape photographer before getting to the program. So self-portraits, the urge to make self-portraits really surprised me. They're not something I've ever expected to make, but they've really become an integral part of my work, which I'll talk about a little later. And these are some of my earlier self-portraits. Both of these have been shown in galleries, by the way. This one is the one on the left is right after I had something called the gamma knife. It's like a radiation surgery, and that bandage in the left was the gauze that was wrapped in my head after I took it off. I made it to look like a flower. This photo on the left was one of my other dad's things. This is his old high school ID that I made into a composite or collage, whatever you want to call it, on the back of a palm. And that's that wig photo of me grabbing wig. Was one of the very first pictures I took for my first ever critique. So my bodies of work that I did for school, now and beyond school, but while I was in school, I primarily did focus on 3 things: self-portraits, landscapes, and hospital photos. And the self-portraits and landscapes kind of merged at some point. So I quickly introduced landscapes back into my work in school, but I struggled making these swamp photos connect to the story about my cancer, my dad's history with cancer, and our shared love of the swamp. So as time went on, it became more and more obvious what I needed to do. I needed to start incorporating hair and self-portraits into my landscape photos to better tell my story and my dad's story. And really quick, the picture on the right, the photo on the right, that's probably my most successful photo. I was thrilled to get into the Ogden's Louisiana Contemporary show in 2021 of this photo. And the title of the photo is called Tree Hair. And I really knew that I wanted to incorporate hair with the swamp. And Spanish moss is something that really reminded me of this wig. And Spanish moss is neither Spanish nor moss, just like that wig is not actually my hair. And there's an indigenous word called the Ikla. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but that translates to tree hair. So that made me really think about that. And here's a picture. Unfortunately, this is like one of my favorite areas in Barataria Preserve and on the Bayou Cookheel Trail, where I took the image of tree hair. And Hurricane Ida last year decimated the swamp, and that tree is no longer standing. So I took a photo where the tree used to be. This is a self-portrait. I'm wearing a old shirt of my dad's. It says Cajun on the front. I used to love the shirt on him, and I love wearing it. And I wear Cajun heritage. So I decided to take this self-portrait with that shirt. And then this is a wig on a palm, so it's kind of a similar photo, just with the wig as a stand-in for me, I guess. And I love taking submerged pictures of submerged vegetation. I've really always been fascinated with these little like microcosms that exist just under the surface of the water, not unlike the way cancer lodges itself in our body, hidden from the naked eye. So our bodies are like an internal landscape, if you will. And here's another one. So to shift gears a little bit, the swamp versus the Southwest. The swamp desert connection may not be obvious at first, but it's really obvious to me why I'm drawn to both. So when I was a little kid, my family and a teenager, my family went to the Grand Canyon twice on 2 different family summer road trips. And the place left a mark on all of us, including my dad. And the last thing my dad wanted to do before he died was hike to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, but he was too sick and never got the chance. So over the years, I did it 10 times. And then basically my entire family actually did it, which is really cool. My brother eventually worked at the bottom for a couple years. My sister hiked down there 5 times. Of course, Thomas hiked with me. And then my mom and my aunt actually did it once. And the swamp is so different than the Southwest, which is part of the allure for me. And I think that was the part of the allure for my family as well, way back when. They can be really harsh but beautiful environments in opposite ways. And this picture was in particular taken in Sedona, Arizona, 2 summers ago. So with the proliferation of working remotely during the pandemic, my husband and I had the luxury of working from wherever we wanted with remote work. So the summer between my MFAs, we spent 6 weeks in northern Arizona, and then we did the same thing last summer. And actually we went back for a short time this summer too. And I really started on the second Sedona trip, I really started tying in my personal history with the desert landscape. So these 2 self-portraits are both part of diptychs that have been shown in galleries. The one on the left mimics an old family photo, and it was displayed with the original family photo. And the one on the right is where I paired this photo with a photo of just like dirt. And it's kind of like an ashes to ashes, dust to dust thing. And the chemo that I was on was really wrecking my hands. It's called hand and foot syndrome. So I really wanted to showcase my hands and like how much they look like aged from chemo treatment. And this one I took this one this past summer at the Grand Canyon again. And this one's actually on display right now. It's October 2022. And it's on display for the SB South Central Caucus student exhibit, which is currently on display in Shreveport. And this is just a lovely Sedona sunset hike that I took. So my last bodies of work are my hospital photos. I make these in various hospital settings as a source of distraction and documentation. They give me purpose, so it doesn't feel like my suffering is in vain. And I follow a few parameters when making these images. So first off, I convert them to black and white for consistency and drama. I show everything from the mundane, like common hospital objects, and then these are much more intimate than some of my other work. I only use my iPhone, so I don't disrupt the process or change the dynamics of the experience when I'm shooting. And so usually I'm the only person in the room, except I've made an exception for that once. So the picture on the left, it was when I had I went back on this one chemo I used to be on, and I developed an anaphylactic shock. I developed an allergy to the chemo, so I made that photo when I was actually in anaphylactic shock. The one in the middle, those are just cords that are like some standard medical equipment in all the clinic rooms. And then the one on the right was the one I got some assistance on. That was an MRI tech. I had him line up and take the photo for me. That was when I was getting a brain MRI. So balance. I really need balance and a break from taking photos of such heavy subject matter. So these are my like quote unquote feel good photos. Prior to getting into the MFA program for studio art, photography was my like feel good thing, the way I would take a break from writing about heavy subject matter. But now I'm making work with the lens of the same cancer experience that I was writing about. So what I do is I go on walks with a film camera just to shoot for the love of shooting with no agenda. And I often gravitate towards different subject matters depending on what kind of camera I use. So these are both 35 millimeter, I believe, shot on Pentax K1000. I love that camera because it's so simple, especially compared to like, the bells and whistles of digital cameras, which is my primary camera. The one on the left, it was like a paper mache sculpture statue on a front porch on Britannia Street in New Orleans. And then the one on the right was the Grand Canyon. And I took that on kind of like special kind of film, which produced like this lovely grainy effect that makes it like just like super old. And these next two photos are digital. This is like my rose bush in my front yard, and I have a kaleidoscope lens that I just bought a couple years ago, never touched it. So I've been kind of experimenting with that. It's been great fun. And also like a snake in the swamp. I mean, this could apply to like my swamp photos and, that whole narrative, but there is some crossover between my feel-good work and my quote-unquote serious work. And while I was in the program, and I still do some of this today, I did some extracurricular work. So I started a small yet thriving headshot business, and I do some family portraits. I also used to teach 3-hour-long photo classes outside of school once a month, which is really fun for me. And I did some photojournalism, just a little bit. I was really thrilled when I got into that Eddie Adams workshop in 2021, which was the hardest, yet was one of the most rewarding things I've done. I also shot for Vice News in these times and some other local publications. And also film work. Prior to my MFA program, I only shot digital. So I really wanted to take advantage of all the school's resources since we had a darkroom and developing room. So I learned how to do that. And I've been shooting film ever since I first started the program in 2 years. And at first, some of my professors worried that I was spreading myself too thin, but I proved them wrong. And that's another example of headshots that I've done. And then this summer, I had the privilege of being the volunteer photographer for a first ascent trip in the Adirondacks for a rock climbing excursion. And what a first ascent is, it's just such a cool program. They do free adventure trips for cancer patients, caregivers, healthcare workers, also MS patients. So I had gone on a rock climbing trip and as a participant 3 years ago, and I loved it so much. And then June of this past year, I was thrilled when I got accepted to be a volunteer photographer for a week-long trip in the Adirondacks as a way of kind of paying it forward. And just, it was super fun. So thank you so much for listening.